The universe watched in amazement. A species known for destroying diplomatic missions had now become a collaborative partner. Jae-sung had not conquered the Voraks. He had understood them. And in understanding, he had achieved what weapons and threats could never do. Commander Kim's personal recommendation elevated Jae-sung to a status unprecedented for a human. He was granted access to Vorak strategic archives, allowed to study their most protected cultural secrets. No human had ever been trusted with such information. During one critical meeting, Jae-sung revealed the true power of cross-species communication. By showing how the Voraks' defensive strategies could be adapted to protect multiple civilizations, he transformed their reputation from feared conquerors to respected guardians. The Voraks Leadership Council made a historic decision. They would formally recognize humans as a species worthy of complete diplomatic respect. This was more than a political move. It was a fundamental cultural shift that would reshape galactic interactions. Jae-sung understood the weight of this moment. He wasn't just a diplomat anymore. He had become a bridge between civilizations, the living example of how understanding could overcome centuries of misunderstanding and fear. Other galactic civilizations began to take notice. If the Voraks, a species known for destroying everything in their path, could form a genuine alliance with humans, what other impossible collaborations might become possible? The transformation was complete. What had started as a potentially violent first contact had become a partnership that would change the course of galactic history. Jae-sung had done what seemed impossible. He had shown that communication was the most powerful weapon in the universe. As stars continued to burn in the infinite darkness, a new chapter of interstellar cooperation had begun. And it all started with one human who dared to understand instead of fear. Something unexpected happened. The weapon systems on the Vorak ship began to power down. Commander Kim's holographic representation tilted her head, a gesture that in human terms might indicate curiosity, but in Vorak's communication was a complex signal of potential respect. Jae-sung knew he had done something no human diplomat had ever achieved. He had not just survived first contact. He had created a moment of potential communication with a species that had previously destroyed every attempt at interaction. The darkness of space seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would happen next. The meeting room was cold and sterile, designed to minimize any potential cultural misunderstandings. Jae-sung sat perfectly still, his hands resting flat on the smooth metal surface. Across from him, Commander Hae-jin Kim's presence dominated the space, her massive frame casting a shadow that seemed to absorb all light. Translation devices hummed softly, struggling to capture the nuanced communication happening between them. Every movement, every slight shift of muscle was a potential message in Vorak's culture. Jae-sung had studied these interactions for years, but experiencing them firsthand was entirely different. Commander Kim's eyes, deep amber with metallic flecks, never left Jae-sung. They weren't just looking at him. They were analyzing every microscopic detail of his existence. Vorak's females were known for their ability to read intentions before they became actions, a skill that had made them feared across multiple star systems. "Your species is unusual," she finally spoke, the translation device converting her complex chemical-linguistic communication into words humans could understand. It wasn't a compliment, nor was it an insult. It was an observation, weighted with centuries of alien judgment. Jae-sung knew that most human diplomats would have shown fear. Fear was a sign of weakness in Vorak's culture, a trigger that could transform a diplomatic meeting into a violent encounter within seconds. Instead, he maintained a calm, almost mathematical presence. He noticed the subtle changes in her body language. The way her exoskeletal plates shifted slightly, the microscopic chemical signals released through her breathing membranes. Each was a language unto itself. Where others saw a monster, Jae-sung saw a complex communication system waiting to be understood. "We are different," Jae-sung responded, carefully controlling his body language. Different is not inferior or superior. Different is simply different. For a moment, Something flickered in Commander Kim's eyes. Was it surprise? Interest? In Vorax culture, emotions were not displayed like human expressions. They were complex chemical and neurological responses that required deep understanding to interpret. The meeting continued, a delicate dance of communication. Each word, each gesture was a carefully constructed bridge between two species that had never successfully communicated before. Jae-sung knew that one wrong move could destroy everything he had worked to achieve. Outside the meeting room, tension filled the massive starship. Other Vorax officers watched the interaction through advanced monitoring systems, waiting for any sign that would justify their traditional response to potential threats. Total elimination. Commander Kim began discussing territorial expansions, a topic that had historically led to violent confrontations. But Jae-sung was prepared. He had studied Vorax negotiation tactics, understanding that for them, discussion was a form of strategic warfare. Our expansion is not about conquest, she explained, her voice carrying layers of meaning. It is about survival, about protecting our genetic lineage. Jae-sung recognized the underlying message. The Vorax were not simply aggressive conquerors. They were a species fighting for their continued existence in a dangerous universe. His response needed to acknowledge this fundamental truth. Survival requires adaptation, he said, choosing his words carefully. Not just physical strength, but understanding. Communication is a form of survival. Something unexpected happened. Commander Kim's rigid posture softened almost imperceptibly. In Vorax culture, this was equivalent to a human showing a slight smile, a massive breakthrough in diplomatic communication. The meeting continued, each moment a delicate negotiation between two completely different species. Jae-sung knew he was walking a razor's edge. One wrong word, one misunderstood gesture could transform this potential breakthrough into another failed diplomatic mission. But for now, something remarkable was happening. A human and a Vorax were actually communicating, truly communicating, for the first time in recorded history. The research facility buzzed with quiet intensity. Jae-sung worked tirelessly, mapping the intricate communication patterns of the Vorax. His workspace was filled with holographic displays showing complex linguistic algorithms, chemical interaction charts, and behavioral analysis models. Commander Hai-jin Kim observed him from a distance, her curiosity growing with each passing day. Most males of any species would have been intimidated by her presence, but Jae-sung remained focused, treating her species' communication like a complex mathematical problem waiting to be solved. His breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a routine communication analysis, he discovered that Vorax language wasn't just verbal or physical. It was a multi-layered system of chemical signals, body movements, and neural transmissions. Each gesture carried multiple meanings, each chemical release a complex emotional landscape. The Vorax had always been misunderstood. Other species saw them as violent conquerors, but Jae-sung saw a sophisticated communication system that humans had never comprehended. Their aggression was not mindless. It was a carefully calculated survival strategy. One evening, during a routine research session, Jae-sung demonstrated something unprecedented. Using a specially designed communication device, he began to replicate the complex Vorax communication patterns. It wasn't perfect, but it was closer than any human had ever gotten. Commander Kim watched in silent amazement. Her species had encountered thousands of civilizations, destroyed hundreds of diplomatic missions. But this human was different. He wasn't trying to conquer or intimidate. He was trying to understand. The research facility became a meeting ground of two completely different cultures. Jae-sung's linguistic algorithms broke down barriers that had existed for centuries. He showed how Vorax communication was a delicate dance of survival, protection, and complex social structures. Your language is not a weapon, Jae-sung explained during one session. It's a survival mechanism. Each chemical signal, each body movement is a way of protecting your species. Commander Kim's response was subtle. A slight shift in her exoskeletal plates, a microscopic chemical release that in Vorax culture was equivalent to deep respect. She was beginning to see humans differently. The breakthrough came during a complex communication experiment. Jae-sung had developed a translation system that could capture the multi-layered communication of the Vorax. It wasn't just about converting words. It was about understanding the entire emotional and cultural context. Other Vorax researchers began to take notice. They watched as this human did something impossible. He was creating a bridge between two species that had always been separated by misunderstanding and fear. Jae-sung's approach was unique. Where other diplomats saw the Vorax as a threat, he saw a complex civilization with deep cultural roots. His research showed that their aggressive behavior was a sophisticated survival strategy developed over millions of years. Commander Kim began to share more small details about Vorax culture that had never been revealed to any other species. Their family structures, their survival strategies, the complex social hierarchies that governed their entire civilization. The research facility became a symbol of hope, a place where two completely different species were learning to understand each other. Jae-sung's work was more than just linguistic research. It was a potential key to preventing interstellar conflicts. As weeks turned into months, something remarkable happened. The Vorax research team began to see Jae-sung as more than just a human researcher. He was becoming something else, a bridge between two completely different worlds. Commander Kim made a decision that would change everything. She recommended Jae-sung for a special diplomatic mission, something no human had ever been offered before, a chance to truly understand the Vorax civilization from the inside. The universe watched and waited. Something extraordinary was happening. A human was about to do what no one had ever done before. The warning alarms screamed across multiple star systems. Machine civilization, a collective of artificial intelligences that consumed entire planetary systems, had been detected approaching the borders of both human and Vorax territories. Jae-sung stood in the central command center, surrounded by Vorax military strategists. Their massive forms moved with precision, each movement calculated and deliberate. Outside the viewing windows, massive battleships prepared for what might be the most significant conflict in galactic history. Commander Hae-jin Kim's voice cut through the tension. The machine civilization will not stop. They consume. They destroy. They replace. Most species would have argued, competed for strategic advantage. But something unique was happening here. Jae-sung had spent months building trust, breaking down communication barriers that had existed for generations. "We fight together," he said simply. The translation device captured not just his words, but the complex chemical and physical signals that communicated absolute commitment. The Vorax Military Council went silent. No human had ever spoken with such direct understanding of their communication protocols. Jae-sung wasn't just proposing an alliance. He was speaking their language of survival. Holographic displays showed the approaching machine fleet, millions of synchronized artificial units, each designed to consume and replicate. They moved like a single organism, absorbing resources, destroying everything in their path. The machine civilization had already destroyed 3 entire star systems, billions of lives eliminated in moments. They didn't just attack, they consumed entire planetary ecosystems, converting everything into raw computational resources. Vorax battle strategies were legendary. Their females were known as the most dangerous warriors in known space, but even they recognized the scale of this threat. The machine civilization was something entirely different, an enemy that didn't understand fear, mercy, or negotiation. Jae-sung's proposal was simple but revolutionary. By combining human adaptive technology with Vorax biological warfare capabilities, they could create a defense system unlike anything the machines had encountered. "They learn," Jae-sung explained, "but they cannot understand complexity. We are complexity." Commander Kim's response was a complex chemical release that in Vorax language meant complete agreement. Her massive form moved closer to the strategic display, her exoskeletal plates shifting in preparation for battle. The first wave of machine units approached, thousands of synchronized attack vectors, designed to overwhelm through pure mathematical precision. But they hadn't encountered a defense created by two species working in perfect harmony. Human quantum computing merged with Vorax biological signal disruption. Each defensive move was a complex dance of technology and organic intelligence. The machine units found themselves confronted with a defense that changed faster than they could calculate. Jae-sung watched the battle unfold. This was more than a military engagement. This was proof that understanding could be the most powerful weapon in the universe. Vorax battleships moved with impossible precision. Human support systems provided real-time adaptive strategies. Where machines expected predictability, they found chaos. Where they expected weakness, they found unprecedented strength. Hours turned into days. The battle raged across multiple star systems. The machine civilization, for the first time in its existence, encountered a defense it could not immediately understand or overcome. Commander Kim looked at Jae-sung. In that moment, something changed. This was no longer about two different species. This was about survival. This was about something greater than individual civilizations. As the final machine units were destroyed, something remarkable happened. The Vorax Military Council looked at Jae-sung not as a human, but as an equal. Not as an outsider, but as a partner in survival. The universe shifted. A new understanding had been born, not through conquest, but through communication. Not through fear, but through mutual respect. The battle was over, but something much bigger had just begun. The aftermath of the battle changed everything. Jae-sung found himself in places no human had ever been allowed before. The inner sanctum of Vorax leadership, a space more sacred and restricted than any top-secret human facility. Commander Hae-jin Kim had become more than a diplomatic contact. She was now something between an ally and a cultural translator, bridging two civilizations that had once seemed impossibly different. Her recommendation had transformed Jae-sung's status from a mere diplomat to a respected strategic partner. Vorax society began to shift. For the first time in their recorded history, they started viewing males, of any species, as potential equals rather than subordinates. Jae-sung's strategic thinking during the machine civilization conflict had shattered centuries of rigid cultural assumptions. The interstellar council meetings became something entirely new. Where previous diplomatic interactions were tense and controlled, now there was genuine dialogue. Humans brought adaptive technology. The Vorax brought biological resilience, and together they created strategies that made other galactic civilizations take notice. Jae-sung's communication research became mandatory study for both human and Vorax diplomatic academies. His linguistic algorithms and cultural translation methods were considered revolutionary. He had done what no one thought possible. He had created a genuine cross-species understanding. Commander Kim explained to her leadership council that humans were not just another species to be categorized or potentially conquered. They were a dynamic, adaptable civilization that could transform challenges into opportunities. Jae-sung represented this potential perfectly. The transformation wasn't just political or military, it was cultural. Vorax research facilities began exchanging scientists with human institutions. Technology transfer became a collaborative process instead of a competitive one. What was once unthinkable had become standard procedure. Some conservative Vorax leaders initially resisted. They saw Jae-sung's approach as a potential weakness, but the success against the machine civilization spoke louder than any traditional argument. Results, as always, were the ultimate diplomatic language. Interstellar trade routes opened. Vorax merchant ships, once known for their aggressive territorial claims, now carried human diplomats and researchers. Cultural exchange programs became a priority. Schools on both sides started teaching the complex communication methods that Jae-sung had pioneered.